Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a happy Easter. The weather kind of stunk, didn't it? Looks like it's pretty nice outside today. I mean, it's still cool, but anyhow, we're going to get back to work on this. We've got a little bit to finish up here with Europe, but I'm going to get into some other things that will impact after the war. And then also, we've got the Pacific left to do. So, here's your lecture for today, guys. So in February of 1945, the big three are going to get together. Okay. Now, as Sesame Street used to show, say which one of these is not like the other. Okay. Well, obviously, this guy is wearing a military uniform. He's a communist dictator. He is our ally, and to be honest, the Soviet Union has been bearing the major brunt of, Hitler and so forth. And as you guys know, the Soviet Union is going to lose between 20 and 25 million people during World War II. The United States is going to lose 400,000. Okay, so they've been doing a lot of heavy lifting. Of course, our people have too. I mean, look at D-Day and going across France, the Battle of the Bulge, which is the biggest battle of the war for us. Obviously the Brits have been in this thing since 1940, so it's taken its toll on them as well. Now, here's the part of this meeting, guys. It's called Yalta. Yalta is a resort on the Black Sea, and Stalin claimed a fear of flying, didn't want to fly. So basically, when they set the meeting, they had to do it close to Stalin. Now, the Yalta is on Russian soil, Soviet soil. And so he hosts the meeting for these two other democratically elected leaders. And so it's on his home turf, which is going to give Stalin an advantage here when it comes to determining what Europe is going to look like, what the world is going to look like when this war is over. Okay, now making these two old men fly halfway across the world, especially Roosevelt, who will be dead by the end of April. It takes a toll. Churchill's no spring chicken, although he will far outlive Roosevelt. Actually, he'll outlive Stalin as well. But anyhow, what are they talking about here? Making plans for the surrender of Germany. Well, that's not just it, but this is part of it. Okay, and they agree. These three leaders agree that there will be an unconditional surrender of all our enemies. That means the Japanese and the Germans. Which means when you say unconditional surrender, those leaders understand that they will be sought out, they will be put on trial for war crimes, they will be drugged through all of that. Okay, so this is going to make the enemy fight longer and harder, which means more Americans, more Brits, more Russians, and everybody else that's helping are going to die. This is going to extend the war. Now, if we make a deal with Hitler or make a deal with the Japanese to end the war, those people can stay in power, okay, and then do it again. So this is one of the reasons why they go for the unconditional surrender, okay? Now, they also talk about paying large reparations, making Japan and Germany pay for this war. Remember, we tried this after World War I. Now, when it's all said and done, guys, the United States and Britain will not demand reparations. Stalin will, especially when you get to understand this. East Germany will pay those reparations, for 40 years, okay? So, let's continue on. This next slide's pretty good. It's got a lot of information on it, okay? So we'll just go one at a time here. All right, so Stalin is a tough bargainer. He's on his home soil. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, guys, and what's coming up to this meeting, okay? These two guys should be on the same side. Even though all three of them are friends at this point, allies, This guy is a dictator, okay? Churchill wanted to meet with Roosevelt before they went out to Yalta, all right? Roosevelt refused. Now, we can only guess as to why Roosevelt would not meet with Churchill. Well, on the face, if you got a meeting of three and two of them meet beforehand, well, Stalin's going to be put on the defensive, okay? Does he have to know? No, he doesn't have to know. Another reason could be that, maybe Roosevelt was just tired of Churchill. I mean, Churchill's been bugging him since 39, 38, help, help, help. We need your help. And then once they got in the war, they're like, you guys need to get in the war. And maybe Roosevelt's just tired of Churchill, doesn't want to meet with him or send the wrong message to Stalin, like I said, okay? This is important, okay, because what Stalin's going for here and what he's going to get in the end is going to affect hundreds of millions of lives for decades, okay? So we're talking about the fate of Europe after World War II, okay? So Stalin wanted Poland, all right, their neighbor, okay? He wanted them to have a communist government, okay? Roosevelt and Churchill said no to this. So here's in class, I'd ask you, I'd say, okay, so does anybody know, was Poland communist after the war? And if you know a little bit about history, okay, Mr. Lipinski certainly knows, yes, it was communist for 40 years, okay? And you guys know Pope John Paul II and his story and so forth, and the fight against communism in Poland. It would be a long, hard battle, okay? So Stalin's going to get his way, okay? He wanted half of the reparations. Russia had been devastated. There's no question they've been devastated. And so he wants half of them. And he doesn't want to split them up by thirds, if you understand, okay? Now, this is a really important thing here, okay? He promised to declare war on Japan after the defeat of Germany, all right? This is going to happen. Now, he says we will help 3 months after victory in Europe, we will declare war on Japan, okay? They do keep that promise, all right? But the timing here is going to be really interesting, okay? Because the war in Europe is going to end on May 8th, 1945. They call that VE Day, Victory in Europe, May 8th, okay? Okay, so June, July, August 8th, okay, is 2 days after we dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and 1 day before we dropped the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. This is going to allow Stalin to get his troops into China, into the Korean Peninsula, which is huge for later on, guys, and start to impose his will in Asia. Okay, so this plays a vital role. We're still seeing it today with North Korea, okay? The impact of this here, okay? Very interesting, okay? He promises to join the United Nations when it's established. The Russians do join, the Soviets, but they demand 2 seats because they're such a large country, okay, on what's called the UN Security Council, which we'll talk about more later, okay? Churchill and Roosevelt allowed Stalin to take some Japanese islands and outer Mongolia. Okay, if you look at a map, look at outer Mongolia, it's this big country that's kind of southeast of the Soviet Union, between Soviet Union and China. Okay, and so we're going to allow him to do that. And then this one, guys, is a promise not kept. He said he would not interfere in Eastern Europe. Okay. Well, if you look here at this graph, excuse me while I reach. Okay, you've got, this is Churchill, this is Roosevelt, played by Uncle Sam here. Okay, you've got him reaching for China, India, and so forth. He's got Europe. Okay, so much of Europe is going to fall under the communist jackboot after the war is over. Okay, and I will go into great detail about that. Okay, now. some historians feel that certainly these two men should have stood up to this man. Okay, now the war wasn't over. I think by February, obviously, guys, we knew we were going to defeat Germany. Okay, but the whole question in the Pacific is still up in the air, guys. We're not there yet, and so we really feel like we need Stalin, okay, to win. And so they're going to allow him to do some things and make some promises that I think they had to know he wasn't going to keep, okay? Why? Why would they not stand up to this man, okay? After just seeing what happened when you didn't stand up to Hitler, well, you know, 100 million people are going to die. That sort of thing. You know what I mean? It's awful. Okay, so they took him at his word. This was a mistake. Okay, felt they didn't have a choice. They felt they needed the Soviet armies. Let me highlight this for you so you can read it. Felt like they needed the Soviet armies to defeat Germany and Japan. And for the next 40 years, the free world would pay a price for Stalin's lies. Okay, so this is going to take us into the Cold War. All right, between the Soviet Union and the United States, between the West and the communists, okay? And so the underpinnings of the Cold War are really happening here, all right? So I want to talk about something that happened at this conference that Roosevelt didn't even know was happening. Stalin did. Churchill wasn't aware. But this was on Russian soil. And we find out today, not today, but since 1990, new information has come out about this meeting. All right. So the fact is, guys, this man, let me go back to this picture. This man had a Russian spy, a Soviet agent, working in the United States government, in the State Department, that was advising this guy on this guy's soil in Yalta, okay, advising Roosevelt at this conference, okay? His name is Hist. He's a key State Department official. The State Department deals with diplomacy, okay? So in putting together this meeting of the big three here, Hist is playing a role. He's advising the President of the United States, and he's a Russian spy, okay, paid for from the Kremlin. All right, so this sounds very McCarthyite, yes? So let's talk about McCarthyism. Now, guys, maybe last year when you guys were in English class, I think maybe when you were sophomores, maybe juniors, you read a book. It was a book called The Scarlet Letter. Yeah, The Scarlet Letter. Okay, where... No. The Salem witch trials, right? The Salem witch trials. Is it the same? I don't say it. The Salem witch trials. Remember how, they accused these people of being witches and so forth, and it all turned into a frenzy and all that. So your English teacher probably made an analogy towards McCarthyism when it came to the Salem witch trials, okay, which is a good comparison, okay. So anyhow, I want to talk about this. Remember the first Red Scare? The first Red Scare took place in the 1920s. Remember the immigration issues that they were having? I wouldn't say issues. They were having immigration, and they said that we wanted to stop people coming in from the East. Communism had taken over in Russia, and they wanted to stop those people with these ideas from coming into the country. Okay, that was the first Red Scare, all right? The second Red Scare comes along later, okay, at the end of World War II, all right? So what does McCarthyism mean? It says, the practice of making accusations of disloyalty, subversion, or treason without proper regard for evidence. It also means the practice of making unfair allegations or using unfair investigative techniques, especially in order to restrict dissent or political criticism. All right? The term has its origins in the period known as the Second Red Scare. lasting roughly from 1950 to 56. Okay, these dates are important. Okay, 50 to 56, and characterized by heightened fears of communist influence on American institutions and espionage by Soviet agents. Oh, yeah. Originally coined to criticize the anti-communist pursuits of Republican Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. Okay, McCarthyism took on broader meaning, describing the excess of similar efforts. The term is also now used more generally to describe reckless, unsubstantiated accusations, as well as demagogic attacks on the character or patriotism of political adversaries. You know, like kind of like when President Trump was running for office, and they said that he was colluding with the Russians, and then they spent 2 years looking into this and hired a special prosecutor and all of that, and oh, there was no evidence of that? Oh, I see. Okay. Sounds like McCarthyism. We'll see. Okay. Anyhow, what does this mean? Okay, why am I talking about this? Okay, because we know now when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, okay, they opened up their archives. We knew the Soviets were spying on us. We knew they had agents in our country. McCarthy was right. There were communists infiltrating our government. Okay. Now the thing with McCarthy is that his methods were, let's just say, not very valid. Okay, he didn't have evidence for some of the things he was saying. Like at one point he says, I have a list of 100 names of communists working in the State Department. That was a lie. Okay, and when you over exaggerate things like that and people catch you in it, they're going to bury you. And Joseph McCarthy was buried, guys. What most people don't know is that McCarthy was extremely popular. He was a tail gunner on a B-17 bomber during World War II. Okay, he ran for the Senate in Wisconsin. Many people wanted him to run for president. He was very popular. Okay, but when the media turned on this, and McCarthy brought a lot of this on himself. Okay, he was really put in his place, and he kind of just faded away, and it's kind of a sad story with McCarthy. But the fact is, McCarthy was right in many areas that there were communists infiltrating our government, and we find out after the war, or after the Soviet Union collapses, we're able to put 2 and 2 together. Okay, and here's the 2 and 2. All right, now on this slide, and I'll go through this with you guys. During World War II, remember the OSS, Wild Bill Donovan, Moberg, the Catcher, and the Spy? We were intercepting messages from the Soviet Union into the United States during the war. Okay, there was a project. It was called Venona, the Venona Project. So this is U.S. military intelligence and the OSS, but mostly the U.S. military is tracking these messages, okay? But trying to figure out who these messages were going to was the difficult part. When they opened the Soviet archives, they were able to put the Venona Project information and the Soviet archive information and put 2 and 2 together and figure out who some of these spies actually were. Now they're all dead because time has passed, you know what I mean? So let me read this to you, okay? Now, we understand that communist infiltration in the U.S. government in the 30s and 40s was real and damaging. Okay, so remember, McCarthyism was 1950 to 56. Okay, so that's kind of important to remember. So this was happening before that. Okay, the opening of some Soviet archives and the release of the Venona Project files, which were intercepted wartime and post-war messages between Moscow and communist agents of the United States, confirm much of what Chambers, okay, this is Whittaker Chambers, guys. He is a confessed Soviet spy, okay, and they got him to roll on this guy. This guy said this guy is also a spy. This is Hist. This is the guy that was advising Roosevelt at Yalta on Russian soil. So Stalin had a paid Soviet agent advising the president. Okay. So this is confirmed what Chambers, Elizabeth Bentley, and other ex-communists told the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. Okay, so if you're ever into this McCarthyism stuff, okay, you look up video on it. Okay, remember, McCarthy was a senator, so he had nothing to do with the House Un-American Activities Committee. You have to understand that, okay? So there were people in the House that were also looking into this communist influence, okay? House Un-American Activities Committee. So un-American being communists, okay? So they were the ones that brought people before them, this HUAC committee, to say, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Okay, and they ruined some people's lives because they exposed the relationship to the Communist Party. This included actors, people in Hollywood, people that worked in our government and so forth. We asked for loyalty oaths to the U.S. government and so forth. So there's some ugly stuff and bitterness with the House American Activities Committee. But there's also some serious spying going on here, okay? So 3 recent books on the subject: The Haunted Wood, The Venona, The Haunted Wood. Can I get this to all be black? Yes, I can. Venona, the decoding of Soviet espionage in America, and the Venona secrets provide evidence that American communists successfully infiltrated, check this out, the State Department, that's this guy and others, Treasury Department, the OSS, so that's like the CIA, the Soviets had gotten in there, Justice Department, Agriculture Department, Commerce Department, the Office of War Information, the War Production Board, the Board of Economic Warfare, the Civil Service Commission, the AAA, the Army, the Navy, Congress, the Manhattan Project. Holy crap, guys. If you don't know what this is the project that built the atomic bomb. Okay, so the Soviets had spies there, at least 2 of them. Okay, one was a British scientist and the other was an American. Okay, both being paid by the Soviets for secrets on the atomic bomb. Okay, so get this, guys. The Soviets knew about the atomic bomb before the Vice President Truman did. Okay, Truman was not told about this project, but Stalin knew all about it because he had spies there. They had also infiltrated the United Nations and the White House. The highest-ranking Soviet agents included Harry Dexter White, the number 2 man at the Treasury, Alger Hist, this man, key to State Department official, okay, Duncan Lee, chief assistant to OSS Director Wild Bill Donovan. Okay, so this is like the chief assistant to the director of the CIA being a radical Muslim terrorist that is plotting against the United States. Is that a good idea? That's not a good idea. Okay, so that's a problem. Okay, Congressman Samuel Dickstein, communist. Lucy Lynn Curie, special assistant to Roosevelt. So a special assistant to the President of the United States, a communist spy. In the Venona secrets, they go so far as to identify Harry Hopkins, who we've been talking about since 1932. One of his closest advisors was a Soviet spy. Okay, that's what they think. Okay, if this is true, the Soviet Union had in place an agent of influence, had the ear of President Roosevelt on every significant issue and policy, guys. Okay, so listen, what your teacher taught you about McCarthyism and scare tactics and bullying people and so forth is fine, okay? But the truth is, guys, the Soviet Union had been infiltrating the United States for years, okay? And had gotten people into very high places in government. Now, guys, this is the United States. You can be a communist, okay? Some of you may turn into them. I don't care. Okay, you're free in this country to do that. But is it a good idea when you are locked in a Cold War with an enemy that wants to destroy you to allow them to infiltrate your government at the highest levels? Is that safe? Is that a good idea? No. Okay, and so McCarthyism is a name. McCarthy is a name that is mud. People hate McCarthy and despise him. Most people don't even know what the hell happened. But anyhow, Eisenhower in the Eisenhower's president from 52 to 60. Okay, during that time period, Eisenhower's one of the most level-headed presidents we've ever had, most moderate presidents. He said this of McCarthy. He said, "Thank God somebody is doing it." Speaking of McCarthy and pointing out all these communists in our government. Okay, so it's something that you're not going to get from every history teacher, but it's pretty interesting stuff. All right, so you're welcome to read more on that, the Venona Project and communist spies in our government. Okay, good. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to go another slide, guys. Okay. All right. So check out this map. All right. So remember, the Battle of the Bulge is taking place here. Okay, you got Belgium, Luxembourg, France down in here. Okay, we are going to cross in here into Germany. Okay, let me move some stuff around here. All right, let's do that. I'll move me over here. Okay. That's pretty good. Okay. All right, so. All right, so the First Army, okay, is going to cross the Rhine River. Here's the Rhine. Remember the Rhineland, okay, on March 7th, 1945. Now, as the Rhine would be a good place for the Germans to kind of make a stand behind the Rhine, if you understand, because the Allies are going to have to make bridges and so forth across the river and so forth, okay? But once we cross the Rhine in March, okay, so the Battle of Bulge ended in January, okay, the German defenses begin to crumble, okay? Now remember, the Soviets are closing in all along this eastern front, all right? So Eisenhower has a decision to make. He is the supreme Allied commander, all right, to take Berlin and Prague and make Stalin keep his promises. So if we can reach Berlin before Stalin does and take it, we can say to Stalin, okay, here's the rules. If we take Prague, which is over here, we can say to Stalin, look, we can build a wall against communism here, okay, and kind of rebuild Germany on our own, if you think about it, okay? Or, now this is going to cost more American lives, no question, okay? But I want to tell you this, guys. For the American troops that landed on Normandy, that came on those beaches, not just the first waves, but the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the 10th, the 20th wave, guys, these guys, all their goal was to take Berlin, because they knew if they took Berlin, the war would be over. So when the Yanks go marching in to Berlin, guys, there's a song about it, okay? And that's their goal. Well, they're not going to get that, okay? The other option is to mop up German forces behind our lines, let the Soviets take Berlin and Prague, okay? This would make it easier for Stalin to impose communism in Eastern Europe, okay? And we would lose fewer lives, okay? So there's your choice. All right. Now, the fate of Poland, Czech, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and many more are at stake here. Okay. Let me just show you. All right. So when the Russians come in across this front, all the way across here, all of these countries after the war, starting up here, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, okay, Poland, what will become East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. All of these countries are going to be communist for the next 40 years. Yugoslavia will also be communist. Okay? So you see this red wall coming in. And guys, once these Russian tanks roll in here, they don't leave for 40 years. Okay? So this is the importance of the Yalta Conference and what happens in the last few months of the war. Okay, so these countries are at stake. Churchill tried to warn Roosevelt and Eisenhower, look, guys, Stalin is not a good guy. He's a dictator. I can read this guy. Just like, he was warning everybody about Hitler. He's warning these guys about Stalin, and they're not listening. Okay, why is that? So we go back to that whole thing with, Alger Hiss at Yalta. Do we know why, or are we just trying to avoid casualties, guys? Let the Soviets do it. We don't have to. The Soviets want revenge anyways for what the Germans did out in their country. So it's tough. Well, let me tell you, guys, we're going to stop 50 miles west of Berlin. Okay, out here, there's a river called the Elbe River out here. Okay, so the Soviets are going to come in here and take Berlin, and then eventually our troops will meet them here. Okay, so Eastern Europe will go from Nazi tyranny to commie tyranny. That's a little play on words, guys, okay? But it's legit, all right? And it's awful. Now, one of the things I want to mention about this is Berlin, okay? Guys, the Soviets, who are our allies, are going to misbehave very badly in Berlin. Now, Hitler's nuts by this time. I mean, the guy's mad. And he's not allowing civilians to leave these cities, including Berlin, their capital. And he's holed up in a bunker. And the Russians come in, and there's fighting, but most of the fighting is done kind of outside the city. But once they get in, I mean, you have German soldiers that are 13, 14 years old, guys, that this is the last they have, and old men. And so the Russians come in and they do whatever they want. These troops, they will rape, they will pillage, they will destroy, guys. And when I talk about rape, this is massive rape on a massive scale, guys. Women, girls, multiple rapes. If you were a woman in Berlin and you didn't get raped, you were very fortunate. It's a very sad chapter in this war, okay, guys, and you can read about it. It's very well documented. Okay, it's very sad. All right, so would that have happened if we went in there? No. Okay, it would not have happened. Okay, now I want to, while I have this map up here, I want to talk about one more thing. Okay, and that is this city, Dresden. Okay, obviously, guys, by this time, February, March of 1945, guys, we have air superiority over Europe. We dominate the skies. The RAF and the Army Air Corps, we are bombing Germany at will. All right. Now, the decision was made to bomb this city, Dresden. Okay, now Dresden is a very old city. Most of the structures are made out of wood. It's more of a cultural city. There is some military significance. Kurt Vonnegut wrote a book on this, which really, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. Some of you guys might have heard of it. Let me look it up. Yeah, the book is Slaughterhouse 5, okay? And it's a very anti, this policy of bombing Dresden, okay? In my War and Peace class, I used to have students, they have to do a battle and pick a battle and present it, research it and present it. And I've had students come down on both sides of this, where Dresden was seen as a vital war-making city for the Germans, and others that said it played very little military significance and we probably shouldn't have bombed it, but we did for 48 hours, day and night, using incendiaries. So the RAF and the United States both bombed this city for 48 hours. And guys, it created a fire that was so large, so fierce, that when they, afterwards, when they found bodies in there, many of them were not burnt. They did autopsies. They did not suffer smoke inhalation. They literally suffocated, guys. there was no oxygen in the city because the fire was consuming all of the oxygen. That's how big the fire was, okay? So Dresden really becomes the poster child of an anti-war movement after the war, okay? Just the horrors of it, okay? And books like Vonnegut's really help back that up. Now, obviously, guys, also the atomic bombs that we'll be talking about will also play a role in the anti-war movement after the war as well, okay? But Dresden is something that I should talk about, okay? Now, one thing I want to add on this is that Churchill kind of insisted on this, and he knew that Soviet troops would be coming through Dresden. He knew that the Soviet Union was going to be a problem in the future for the Europeans, and so he wanted Stalin's men. He wanted Stalin to see what our air forces combined were capable of if they wanted to get frisky with us, that we could destroy them from the air. Okay, so some people think that's the reason why we did it, is because Churchill insisted for that reason. Obviously, guys, in a just war practice, this killed thousands and thousands of civilians. It's not something you would do. Okay, so I thought I would mention it. Okay, and then we come here. I'm getting on over 35 minutes here. I don't want to keep going. Not because I don't want to. I don't want to put too much on you in a day. So I'm going to pick up from here with another recording tomorrow morning. I hope you enjoy it. We do have quite a few slides left. We're going to talk about the atomic bomb, and really I have a video that I want to show you, and I also have an extra presentation on propaganda I'm going to put in as well. So have a good one, guys. Peace.